Welcome to WordPress Grand Rapids. My name is Topher. This week we are talking about custom field libraries, loosely defined, because one of them actually is not a library, but it's important and we should cover it. So I'm going to just get started here. Let me share my screen. Let's see. That's the wrong button. There we go. Oh, nice. All right. So, introduction to custom field libraries. We're going to look at advanced custom fields, which is the one that is not a library, CMB2, which is the most like a library, and MetaBox, which is kind of a bit of both. So, custom fields are added fields. Added fields added to a post type. That was poorly written. That provide a guided user interface for gathering specific information. Custom fields have been around for a really long time, but they had kind of a horrible user interface and were kind of only useful to do-it-yourselfers. So the modern custom fields API made it possible to make them look much more attractive. A code library is a set of pre-written code to simplify an otherwise complex task. On 2010, when custom post types came out, I looked at it and thought, wow, that's a lot of code. It was just a wall of code. And interestingly, it was mostly just a giant array of settings and options. But since then, several people have come out with libraries where you just include one file and you declare the slug of your post type, and poof, it's all done. And that's amazing. So we're going to look at these code libraries that do the same thing for custom fields. Here's a screenshot of default custom fields without one of these libraries or without using the custom fields API. And so here's a MetaBox, and it's called a key pair relationship. So you give it a name, which is a key, and then the value. It's a key value pair. So the value is whatever you want it to be. So if you were doing like book reviews or something, you could put in here author name, the word actually author _ name as like a variable. And over here, you could write their name. And then it would be available to you in your theme when you're ready to print it. But this is not cool looking for, like, if you were building a site for a client or whatever, you would have to tell them, okay, open custom fields and enter all your own stuff in and make sure you get the IDs right or you're going to mess it up. That's not cool. So this is a set of custom fields made with the custom fields API. Now that's just built into WordPress. You could hand code all this stuff. And I've done it. And it wasn't very fun. It's a ton of code. That's why they make libraries. So this is actually the UI for that Whiskey plugin I was showing you before we started recording. The name of the whiskey goes in the post title and then the post description. But down here, I can put in a URL just for that whiskey, a year, a batch, a currency, a price, and actual star rating. And this actually works. You can just click 3 stars and it will light up 3 of them or 5 or whatever. And then the featured image is just the regular old WordPress featured image. But as you can see, this looks way better than that other interface. So we're going to look at 3 libraries: MetaBox, CMB2, and Advanced Custom Fields. MetaBox can be found at metabox.io and WordPress.org. It's freemium, and it's quite useful in the free version. I'm pretty envious of the stuff in the paid version because there's some really neat stuff, but it is entirely useful in the free version. If you want to pay for it, it's $99 a year for a subset, I think 12 add-ons, $199 for everything they have, and $499 for a lifetime. And that's the one I'm looking at. That's their website right there. And so right now I'm actually going to show you how it works. I have this site set up already. It's running on local WP. And Zoom covers up my tabs. That's not very nice. Anybody remember how to change tabs with the keyboard? Oh, that wasn't it. Let's see if I can move this. Oh, I can. All right, cool. That's moved.
Can,
all right, so
if you're on a Mac, you can cycle through your open tabs with Command Option Arrow key.
Awesome. Thanks. I found I was able to drag the zoom bar down to the bottom of the screen. So that works. So here's the MetaBox homepage. And one of the cool things about it is that it has an online generator. Now, if you're used to ACF, this is similar, except this is going to generate raw code. So we're going to go to settings, and I want to create a MetaBox. And I'm going to call it book information, because we're going to do like book reviews. And the field group ID will be book _ information. We want this to work on posts, but not pages. And again, if you have the paid one, then you can use this on any post type. And actually, the free one will work on any post type. It just doesn't have it in this UI. Position, after content, side, before post title, or after post title. After post title doesn't work in Gutenberg anymore, but I always like after content anyway. It puts it at the bottom of the page. Priority high means it's going to be above everybody else's custom fields. And we do want the content of this MetaBox to be auto-saved when WordPress does its auto-save thing. You can put in a text domain here if you're doing translation stuff. We're going to skip that for now. So I click Generate Code, and there's the code to make just the MetaBox. But now if we click Fields, we can say, I want a text field. So author first name. You can optionally put in a description or a default value, a placeholder. You can choose the size of the input box by putting in a number. And you can make it clonable, which means you could, in the UI, say you want multiple author first names, but we don't want that. So now I want author last name. And let's do ISBN. So these are all I'm going to choose, but I'm going to show you what else is here. It's got all the normal form fields, radio buttons, hidden, all of that. If you go into advanced, there's a color picker, a date time. You know what? Let's do date and choose copyright date. There you go. Ooh, date picker options. Oh, I don't want that. embed a text list WYSIWYG, so you can put like a full-on editor thing in there. WordPress, you can pull stuff from a post or taxonomies or users. Upload fields if you want to have people upload files. And then you can make dividers and headings in here. I don't want any of that stuff. So I'm just going to hit generate code. And there's all the code to make a MetaBox. So I'm going to copy that real quick and go back to our WordPress. So I have installed a plugin called Pluginception, which is a plugin for making plugins. So that means right here I have create a new plugin. And my name is going to be MetaBox Example. My author is Topher, and create a blank plugin. And I take all that code I stole from MetaBox and boop, stick it right there. Oh, and get rid of the extra character I put in. And click update file. I go back to plugins and I see it is activated. So if I go to make a new post, oh, I don't have it there. Why don't I have it there? I did this before, I promise. Let's see. Is it hidden? Preferences, panels. Nope. Well, that's not very cool. Let me try something here real quick. Sometimes you can see them in the classic editor. No. Let's get rid of those custom fields. So let's go back and look at our code and see if we messed something up. Like plugin editor, meta box example. Oh, something I should do. See where it says your prefix? You should put something better in there. That isn't going to fix it for us, but context normal, blah, blah, blah. Return meta boxes. It should all be working. Oh, I'm going to activate the MetaBox plugin, and that's going to make the whole thing work. Nice. Oh, you know, I'm going to turn off classic editor also. Dun, dun, dun. So now we could put our book title up here, write our whole thing in here, and then put in an author first name, an author last name, an ISBN, and a copyright date. Boop, right there. And that's all there is to making a custom MetaBox with MetaBox.io. Super, super simple. I'm actually now going to deactivate MetaBox.io and my example and go back to our slideshow. So some pros of MetaBox. It can be included as a library in commercial plugins and themes without any extra licensing, which means if you have a license and you build a site for somebody, you can embed the whole commercial plugin in their theme or whatever plugins you make for them custom, and they don't have to buy a license, which is really nice because it's really powerful, and I don't want to have to say to my client, hey, you got to spend $200 on this license. It is code-based, so it's very, very fast. There's very little overhead. You saw there's just a few lines of code running it. There's great support. It's run by a guy who lives in Vietnam. He's a good friend of mine, and he does a wonderful job. It has excellent, unique field types. Let me go back and show you some of the cool stuff. Extensions. So views is cool because without views, you have to do a little coding in your theme. There's Elementor integration, Beaver Builder integration, Gutenberg blocks. You can make Gutenberg blocks. You can create really slick user profiles because the default ones in WordPress are horrible. You can have comment meta, user meta, front-end submissions, admin columns, geolocation. This is the one I really want for HeroPress because you can simply put in an address and it will magically find coordinates for you. And then you can build a slick map. Term meta is really nice. SEO stuff. Just there's a ton of stuff here. So really good, unique field types. And as I mentioned, you can make Gutenberg blocks without knowing React, which is really slick. Cons. You cannot include it as a library in free plugins and themes. So that whiskey plugin I was telling you about, I originally used MetaBox, but I wanted some custom stuff with term meta, and that's a paid add-on, and I couldn't include it in the free plugin. So I switched over to CMB2 for that project, actually. And many of the most unique field types are not free. So the cool geolocator one, I can't just magically start using it. I would have to buy it. So that's metabox.io, and I'll say right now it's my favorite one. I would use it over either of the others given the opportunity. but there are reasons for each of them, and we'll go over that at the end. CMB2. CMB stands for Custom Meta Box. CMB was originally made by, I can't remember his name now. A guy named Andrew. I can't remember his last name. But it was rejuvenated by some folks at Web Dev Studios. You can find it at cmb2.io. You can find it on GitHub and WordPress.org. It is 100% free. There's the screenshot of their site right there. I'm going to give you a quick overview of how to use CMB2. And the first thing I'm going to do is activate it. So the wiki for CMB2 is on GitHub. So this is all just good documentation. There's a quick start, getting started, create a meta box, just all kinds of stuff. So we're going to go to create a meta box, and I'm simply going to copy everything here. And come back over here, create a new plugin. Plugin name, CMB2. Oh, look, CMB2 example. It's almost like I did this earlier, so I would know it worked. And I'm going to paste this code right there. Now we're going to go through this code a little bit more than we did the last one. I should have gone through the other one more. There's an add action here that actually makes it happen. Everything's in one big function. Similar to metabox.io, there is one function that creates the metabox. I'm not even going to change the name of most of this stuff. I'll change with the labels. Book information. I don't want it on a page. I want it on posts. Context is normal. Priority is high. Show field names on the left. Yep, that's true. There's some extra features here that the others don't have. For example, you can have it start out closed. So if you don't want to throw it right in the face of the person editing, it starts closed. And it comes with some default styles. You can turn those off if you want. I don't, so I'm going to just rip all that out of there. So then here's our first field. Our name is going to be author first name. Here's a description. I don't want a description. There's your ID. We're going to call it author first name. And while I'm here, I would like to point out this is the key for this field. And this is the same one that metabox.io had. So if we had created content in metabox.io and then gotten rid of it and switched to CMB2, as long as we use the same field names, it's going to have all your data, because that's just stored in the WordPress default meta fields in the database. So if you keep your field names, you will keep your data, even if you switch libraries. Type is text. Show on callback, CB. This one, there are a whole bunch of these callbacks that are available to you. This particular one says, if you have not chosen a category, don't show this field, which means that as soon as you select a category, this field magically pops up, which is really slick. It's a very nice UI. I don't want it. There's a sanitization callback. If you need something, like it does sanitization out of the box, but if you're making your own field or something and you need to do some custom sanitization, you can put something in here. Same for escaping. On front, if it's false, then it's only in the admin area, which can be useful for taking notes. And repeatable, again, with repeatable, you can say, I want the end user to be able to say, I want another text field and another one and another one. So that's useful for like entering ingredients for a recipe. But we don't want those. So out they go. CMB2 has multiple types of text fields. A text URL field will only allow a URL in that field. So you can't just type in whatever. We're not going to do a URL, so I'm going to rip that out of there. Again, text email. You can only put an email box in there. We don't want that, so I'm ripping it out. So we have our first name. Let's make a last name. And then ISBN. And then we had a date one in the other. And I don't remember what the type is. So I'm going to go over to CMB2 and let's see, documentation, field types. And here are all the types. So remember I said there were different text types. There's small, medium, email, URL, money, different text areas, one just for code, time, select a time zone, all that kind of stuff. But what I want is date, which I think, oh, I thought it was at the bottom. Text date. Okay, so go back to our code editor and say text date. And this is copyright date. And this is copyright date. There we go. Update file. And I will reload, and it should look very similar to this. Yeah. So it has slightly different CSS. The copyright date file field is shorter. The calendar picker has a different style, but the fields are all still there. I don't know if it matters to you, but this box is now taller than it was. You can override all of the stuff with CSS. You can give special classes, custom classes to every field type and the meta box itself. So you could get pretty crazy with how it looks. So let's go back here. Pros of CMB2. It can be included as a library anywhere. So for example, over here, I have it installed as a plugin. I'm going to actually deactivate it. For my Whiskey plugin, it's not installed as a plugin. It is actually embedded right in the plugin and called with a PHP include function. And it is very clever in that you can have multiple copies and it knows not to step on each other. It will use the latest one on your system no matter where it is, even if it's in another plugin, which is pretty slick. So for my Whiskey plugin, I don't have to say, you're required to go get CMB2 in order for this to work. Whereas I did actually with MetaBox because it requires the plugin. So I had to use whatever the TGM required plugin is. But with CMB2, you can include it truly as a library and it's completely embedded in your own code. Again, it's code-based, so it's very, very fast. A very complete set of field types. You saw as I was going down all the different field types. And there's a really nice GitHub repository of developer contributed field types. That's where the stars came from for that Whiskey plugin. That's not part of CMB2. Somebody made one because CMB2 is completely extensible. You can make your own field type. Similarly, without much code, similar to just using it in general. It's a library, so you don't need a ton of code to make your own field type. Cons, it is, as far as I know, no longer under active development. Now, that said, it is used by a lot of companies in the world, and they depend on it. And so if it were to go out, it's on GitHub. Anybody can fork it. So if it were to start to have problems, somebody would fix it. There's no commercial support. The only support is basically Twitter. That said, the people who built it are usually pretty helpful. For example, with that stars field, I couldn't figure out how to make it work. So I looked at the author. It was made in like 2015 or 16 or something. I looked up the author's name. He was on Make WordPress Slack. I hit him up. He's a senior engineer at GoDaddy now. And I said, hey, how come this isn't working? He said, oh man, I don't remember. I built that forever ago. And he spent a couple hours during a Phillies game making it work and wrote me back and said, here's what was wrong. It's all set now. There is no GUI. I like the web GUI for metabox.io and ACF, which we'll look at next, as a beautiful GUI. This one has nothing. But as you saw, I was able to copy the example code and make basically anything I wanted with very little effort. So next, we're going to look at advanced custom fields. This is found at advancedcustomfields.com and wordpress.org. This is also freemium. The pay version comes in $49 a year, $149 a year, or $249 a year, based on what is in the package that you buy. Let me go show you some examples. I'm going to activate this, and I'm not going to make a custom plugin because that's not how ACF works. We have a menu over here. Go to field groups. I'm going to make my meta box, which is their name for a field group. We'll call it book information. And right here, I click add field, and I'm going to put in author first name, and it magically proposes that as a field name. So once again, if we had entered data in with either of the other two, this would just pick it up and it would magically be there. Field types this is the free version. So there's text, text area, number, range, email, URL, password, some uploads here, choices, radio buttons, checkboxes, relational. So you can connect one post to another, or pages to each other, or a taxonomy or whatever. There are some jQuery options. There's a Google map, so you can just click a map and get coordinates. Date picker, time picker, color picker, and then layout. You can make a message style, accordion style, tabs, or groups. Tabs are pretty slick. If you have a lot of fields, rather than make a very tall column of fields, you can make one box with tabs across the top, and that's really nice. But we're going to do text here. We're not going to do any of the others, but I want to talk about them. Instructions are just written in the admin area. They never get on the front. You can make it require or not. It's the default value, placeholder text. Prepend appears before the input, and there's append after the input. This is if you wanted to do use an icon font to render an icon of an envelope for an email field or something like that. You can require a character limit. You can have conditional logic, which allows you to say things like only show this field if some other field is turned on, or whatever. CMB and metabox.io can also do conditional logic, but it just requires a little code. And then wrapper attributes, a width, a class, an ID. So I'm going to close this field. So that's our first name. Add author last name. Bloop, there it is. I want text. Close this field. Add field. ISBN. There it is. I want text. So we will close this field. And then copyright date. And for this one, we're going to run down to jQuery and choose a date picker. And publish. And now this is where we show where this meta box appears. And by default, it's when post type is equal to post, which is what we want. But you could do things like when a post status is in something. So you could have a meta box only appear if a post is in draft. You could have it only appear on certain page templates or types. You could only have it appear for certain users or only in their profile. There's a lot of options, and you can do stuff like equal to, not equal to. And I only have page and post, but you could do any custom post tab that's in there. And then furthermore, you can add a new rule group and have multiple conditions. Here's where we say where it is. It's a standard meta box. It's after content. It's top of line. It's below the labels. Order number. You can put in a description. And then you can choose to hide other things on the screen if this box is there. So you can say, I'm making my own featured image with meta or with this, so I don't want the default. So you can turn that off. So we hit update. Oh, what's in tools? I didn't see it. Oh, that's just exporting stuff. So I'm going to reload my post here. And this is what it looks like using ACF. You can see my fields are much longer. And the free one doesn't have a field types of small text or whatever. So even my copyright date is big and long. But that's all there is to making a custom meta box with ACF. There's no code at all. It's all in the UI. So let's come back over here. ACF Pros, by far the easiest of the three. Anybody can figure that out in 10 minutes or less. If you've never used WordPress before, you can figure this out. Very powerful GUI. It has an extremely broad feature set, partly because it's been around for a very long time. And so there's an enormous number of things you can do. Things you probably can't even imagine. And you go looking in their recommended code base and you're like, wow, I never thought of doing that. Vast community support. So lots and lots of third-party plugins have ACF support. Yoast has it. Gravity Forms has it. Basically everybody. ACF is the top of the heap as far as usage. And so everybody supports it. This one can be used also to make Gutenberg blocks without knowing React. CMB2 is the only one that cannot right now. And that's because development stopped happening before Gutenberg started happening. So there's a lot of pros for ACF. There's some pretty heavy cons. It uses the database very heavily. I made that meta box. And so every time the admin page loads, it's not running a little bit of code to create it. It's going to the database and making a few dozen database calls to figure out how to build that meta box. And that's really system intensive. Additionally, it stores a lot of extra data in the database beyond just your own data. It stores a lot of its own data, and it can get up into the hundreds of thousands of rows and really slow your database down. So because of that, I would say you probably shouldn't use it for like large sites, enterprise sites with a lot of traffic, stuff like that. Which is interesting because it's so big. Like it's such a big thing. It can't be embedded as a real library. It is a plugin. With with CMB2, it can be either a plugin or embedded. With ACF, with Metabox, it requires the core plugin, but then all of your regular code is embedded. With ACF, it's all in the website. And so it makes it difficult actually to distribute a plugin with your fields built with ACF. It's not uncommon for themes to use it because they can just say, you have to have ACF to use my theme. But there we are. So we have these meta boxes and we have this data attached to our post or whatever custom post type. And you need to get that data out and show it on the front end of your website. And for that, theme template files need to be edited. There's just no two ways about it. Well, okay, so there's another way about it. Metabox.io has a plugin called Views, which would allow you to do it in a GUI. And I believe ACF would as well. However, that kind of thing is still kind of in its infancy, and it's really common to just edit your template files. ACF and Metabox use custom template tags to get those field values, which makes it very short, sweet, and simple. CMB2 uses standard WordPress functions to get the field values, and those actually are also very short and simple, and you can still use them to get ACF and Metabox data. But ACF particularly stores some of its data in a pretty exotic format. And so you probably want to use their fields because it'll pull it out properly and render it. So I'm going to show you just a little bit. So I have ACF turned on, so I'll just use that one. My book title is The Jungle Book. It's a great book. The author's first name is Rudyard Kipling. ISBN is this number. And it was written in, oh, not the future. I really don't know. We'll say 1935. I didn't take it. Maybe I have to click a date in the calendar. Yeah, there we go. Publish. So now I'm going to view post. So there it is. There's the title, there's the content, and now I want the custom fields. So we're using ACF. So they have a function called get field. And similar to WordPress, it doesn't print it, so you need to echo. I mean, my theme here. So there's WP content, themes, cadence. Cadence stores its template files in a folder called template parts. Content templates are in the content folder. And we want single entry. So this looks a little bit scary, but the thing to learn about all templates and all themes is the part that renders the content is always called the content. So you can see right here, it's entry content. So right below the entry content, I'm going to echo. Whoop, I'm going to put a little HTML in there. Get field whoop, author first whoop, name. I want to talk a little bit about naming here real quick. Author first name is a kind of a bad name because it could collide if somebody else made a plugin with authors and first names. So you should probably prefix them with something like the name of your plugin or my name. So I could be like Topher off of their first name. It's unlikely anybody is ever going to make a plugin with that. Ooh. All right. So we have that line in there. Oh, wrong page. We want jump a look. There's Rudyard. So we come back over here and we throw space in there. Copy that. And say last name. I Rudyard Kipling. We come back over here. Let's go to the beginning of this line and say author. Oh, there goes my author, Rudyard Kipling. Now, a cool thing about this get field is that, like I said, it only echoes. So you can do something like if not empty. Echo that. So now, actually, it's going to, still going to, oh, nope. What did I do wrong? Not enough parentheses. Here we go. So it's still showing. I'm going to go back here and I'm going to rip out old Rudyard's first name. That date. There you go. So if there's no first name, don't print the author thing. And if you wanted to get fancy, you could require first and last name before printing an author. Oh, that's not what I wanted. So I'm not going to grab the other two fields. That's how it's done. You just use get field, and there they are. So get field is used by ACF. Metabox.io does the same sort of thing, but with its function called RWMB meta. Once the field ID, it can take some extra stuff, like you can put some arguments in there, a post ID. Well, that's the other thing. Get field also can take a post ID. So you could grab metadata from some other post. So like if you wanted to do a loop to get all book reviews and print only the author names, you can make your loop get by unique. So you could say only get me unique author names and print them out. And then you could have a nice little list of all the authors that you've reviewed their books. CMB2 uses get post meta, which is a default WordPress function and works almost exactly the same way. It does require a post ID, but I'm not going to actually do this. That's the function to get the post ID. So you can just throw that into that function anywhere, and it will always get the current post ID, and you're good. So let me go back to presenting and skip through a bunch. So I've shown you now how to create a meta box, how to create the fields, and how to get the data back out and put it in your template. And I want to go back to that thing about the post ID, because that allows you to get it from anywhere also. You don't have to be in a loop like on a page. If you want to make a widget or a sidebar box or anything, if you use the ID, you can get data from any post. So let's summarize. These are my opinions. CMB2 is the most flexible when adding functionality to free projects, and is still extremely powerful for all that it's a little bit old. I like it a lot. It works great. In my opinion, MetaBox has the most power and flexibility when working on commercial products or projects. I like MetaBox more than CMB2, but if I can't put it in my free plugin, then I can't use it. So that's the way it goes. ACF is the easiest for beginners to get into by far. So if you don't want to mess with code, you just want to get into this, try it out, ACF is the way to go. And that is the end of the presentation. So now, I need to stop sharing. There we go. So now I'm looking at you and you're looking at me. Any questions?
I have a question about the MetaBox IO. I find myself using the repeater field in ACF often. Is that MetaBox IO as well, like part of the premium or whatever? I figured. Okay.
Yep. Actually, it's not even premium. It's I think repeater is part of the free core.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
That's the exact question I was going to ask.
Yeah. Something I don't know how to do off the top of my head is to repeat a set of meta boxes. So something I have done in the past is for social networks for a user. I want a name and a URL. So I want Twitter and their bio, and I want Facebook and their link to Facebook, and so on. And I want to be able to repeat that. So, if they only have 2, you only get 2. If you have 5, you get 5. I know ACF does it. I'll bet MetaBox does it for free. You just have to read their code snippets. They have a big library of how to do stuff. Kevin, I see you thinking. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, I guess we're done.
Okay, I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to the overhead that ACF naturally has because of how it's built in comparison to MetaBox and CMB, which is faster in your usage, and how negligible is the difference between ACF and the other two?
Yeah. Performance is pretty negligible on, I'm going to say, your average website. You're going to run into it on an old website that has had ACF running for years. A very large website that gets a lot of traffic. I see most of the whining about it on like Codable.io, where freelancers are tasked with figuring out why this site is so slow. And they're like, oh my word, there's 1.5 million rows in this database from ACF. If you're putting it on your blog, you won't notice the difference. If you're putting it on a mom and pop small business shop, you're probably not going to notice the difference. I like the code because I'm a coder. That's my taste. It's popular amongst people who like code to run down ACF because it's so GUI and all that stuff. But it's a very powerful plugin. I cannot deny that. It is extraordinary. Oh, and support for ACF is amazing. I told you about some of the other stuff, but another one that's really important is translations. So if you're doing a multilingual site, all of the translation plugins handle ACF, and I'll bet none of them support either of the other two. So it's very, very much about what you need in this project. If I were today to start building a project for a client and make it commercial and they were paying me, I would use Metabox.io. But if I were to make a free plugin, I'd probably use CMB2. If I were teaching someone how to do this, I'd use ACF. If I needed some weird functionality, I don't know, maybe my client custom built an ACF block or something, then absolutely use ACF. I wouldn't say, no, we're not going to use your custom built code because I don't like ACF. It's a good plugin.
The main difference between the free and premium versions of a lot of these, just like how many different types of fields you can use?
Yeah, that's the really big one. With ACF, it's also integrations. So, I said it integrates with stuff, but that's because those other things integrated with them. So like Gravity Forms built out their own ACF integration, but ACF has built a ton of their own integrations that could be part of Pro. You know what I mean? So if you wanted Gravity Forms ACF integration, you might have to buy that as an add-on from Gravity Forms.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. They might have it for free, but that's a sort of differentiator. You have to think about what you want and see who's making it. Maybe it's ACF, maybe it's the third-party vendor, maybe it's free on .org. You never know. There are 1 million free add-ons for ACF on .org.
What is .org?
WordPress.org.
Oh, WordPress. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. In fact, I'm just going to pull that up. Here, you know what? I'll share my screen again. And I'll show you what I mean. Advanced custom fields. So this is Advanced Custom Fields Extended. This is a lot like Getting Pro, but it has a ton more stuff. Font awesome, typography. Here's the Gravity Forms one. It's free. Table field, image cropping, custom post type options, pods, restrict color picker options, an Ajax load more. There's the Yoast one. It goes on and on and on and on. So you come down here, it says there's 62 pages of ACF compatible add-ons, whatever. So there's a ton of stuff there. All right. I'm going to wrap up the recording. It doesn't mean we have to stop talking, but this is where I'll cut it off to put it up on the web.
Sweet. Thank you, Topher.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This was really fun. This is kind of a passion of mine. I really love both post types and custom fields because together they're magic.
Which would you, for custom post types, do you have a go-to plugin or method for custom post types? I can give a little backstory. I've used the custom post type UI, and I've also used Generate WordPress to build out a custom post type. But yeah, I just wanted your take on that and what you are liking, what you've heard, what's new, what's.
Yeah, let me show you a couple things. Metabox.io has post type generator, which is very similar to Generate WordPress, and a taxonomy generator. It's not really related to their library. It really just outputs the default code, just like Generate WordPress. Pippin years ago made one called Easy Custom Post Types that I used for a long, long time. The problem I have with all of the GUI-based ones is it has the same issue as ACF. It's storing all that stuff in the database. And so every time you load the admin, it's making a ton of extra database calls. My favorite is Extended Custom Post Types from John Blackburn. This one is a true library. It can't be installed as a plugin. Well, you know, let me back that up a little bit. You can make a plugin out of this. So if I were to use this, I would like install it as a must-use plugin. I use it as a real library and embed it right in my plugin. So that whiskey plugin. And I can show you how in just a second. But all you have to do, if you wanted an article custom post type, you would add those 3 lines and it would do everything else for you. Make all the labels, use all the default settings. And if you want to override some, you can. So like show and feed, you could set that different. You could turn off your paging on your archive. And it has some added goodies that the default doesn't have, like admin columns. And you can create your taxonomies with it also right in the same little code thing. So you don't have 2 different functions for your post type and your taxonomy. Let me show you here. GitHub. Topher. Yes, it's at the top. I made that whiskey plugin as I abstracted it to beverage reviews. So you can use it for coffee or wine or pop or whatever you wanted. So here's my code base. I have a vendors table or a directory, and I've used CMB2 as a library rather than as a plugin. And there's extended custom post types right there. And I call them right here. So, that's TGM. So right here, I put in these 3 lines of code. If the plugin exists, include it. And that's it. From there on, I can just use it. Same for CMB2. 3 lines of code. You just include their init.php and magic. You have CMB2 embedded in your plugin, so you don't have to use or require that they install it. And the star field, as I mentioned, was an add-on. So I'm including that separately from CMB2. What's that?
Question. Are you finished or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Question for the examples of having a author name added onto a book. Very common use for ACF. what's some of the rarest occasions you've seen ACF used, or some of the
oh boy,
rarest you would look at someone and say, why would you even want to use ACF? But it ended up being used anyway.
Yeah. Boy, let me think. Probably settings, because you can make your meta box be a sidebar, and it puts it. Let's see, posts, add new. So I put mine under content, but you can put it in the sidebar, and it'll look just like this. So you people will make a meta box, put it in the side here, and have it have options. And in fact, the Cadence theme sort of does something like that. You can see I'm clicking this icon here at the top, and it brings up these post settings. And these are custom fields, basically. They're not using ACF, but they are custom fields. And you could use ACF to make this.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I wouldn't do that, but you could.